This episode of the Old Dogs REI Network is brought to you by Mino Studio.
In a world where jobs are how most people make money, one man, one desire, one challenge dares to break the mold. Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network, where we don't work for money. Money works for us. Coming soon. Viewer discretion advised.
Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network, where cash flow is king. Real estate investing, the means, so you can enjoy your retirement dreams. This is the show where we cut right to the chase. No sales pitch, no long monologues, just simple how-to real estate investing advice, so you can earn the passive income you need to enjoy your retirement today. And now, your host and chief old dog, Bill Manassero.
Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network. I'm your host, Bill Manassero, and this is a show where 50-plussers and anyone else who wants to join us get solid, no sales pitch real estate investing advice to help generate real cash flow. This podcast airs twice weekly on Mondays and Fridays, and if you aren't already a subscriber, go to iTunes or Apple Podcast, type in Old Dogs, spelled D-A-W-G-S, find our podcast and subscribe. Well, we've got a fun show for you today. We have a young man who is just kicking it in real estate. Believe it or not, in California, okay? You've heard me talk many times about how I just don't touch California. I only invest out of state. But here is a guy who's actually crushing it here in California. So I'm dying to hear about what he's doing. His name is Ryan Chaw, and he is a full-time pharmacist, okay? So he's got a full-time job, and he's doing this real estate stuff, okay? He graduated with a Doctor of Pharmacy degree in 2015 at age 23. Early on, Ryan was inspired by his grandpa, who bought 3 properties in the Northern California Bay Area and later achieved financial independence for himself, as well as being able to help cover college tuition for his grandchildren. Ryan bought his first property in 2016, so that's only like 4 years ago. It was a single-family home at his local college. He rented out the house per bedroom and renovated the house to add extra bedrooms, thereby increasing his rental profit. He later repeated the same process for each property he purchased, buying one property each year, all while working full-time. He then optimized his portfolio by creating a system for getting consistently high-quality tenants. And this is another one I want to hear about. Managing the tenants and decreasing expenses through preventative maintenance. Today, he is generating $10,755 per month in rental income. Wow. Well, Ryan, welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network.
How's it going, Bill? I'm honored to be on the podcast.
Hey, it's great having you on. I mean, even though you're not officially an old dog, but you know, you young pups are also welcome on the show anytime too.
Thank you.
I've got like a ton of things I want to ask you because one, I'm a Californian and always interested in how people are, doing it in California, but also just the whole full-time working and building a portfolio. I'm sure there's a lot of people listening that want to hear about that. But before we get started, I'd just really like to hear, just your story. Where do you come from and how long you've been in Northern California? And, did you grow up there? All the stuff that kind of led up to your real estate investing.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Sacramento. I went to college at a place in Stockton called UOP.
Oh, yeah. University of the Pacific, right?
Yeah. And I had a friend who actually house hacked there. His aunt basically bought a property right across from campus, and my friend lived there for free. And that gave me the idea of basically repeating that model. So what I do is I buy single family homes and then I rent out per bedroom to college students to maximize my profit. And I'm able to increase my profit from, say, 1,700 per month, which is what's expected on Zillow or Rentometer or Craigslist, to something more like 3,100 per month by adding extra bedrooms and renting out per bedroom.
Wow. Wow. Are you living in the house, each house that you buy? Like, are you house hacking too, or are you just renting out all the rooms to other people?
I'm renting out all the rooms to other people right now.
Okay, so you're not, let's say, like some people go for like FHA financing or something of that nature, but you have to live there at least for a year to get that. But you're not doing that.
I'm not doing that, correct.
Now, are you buying the homes outright or are you financing them?
I'm financing them. So I do 20% down. And basically, I just bought my first house in 2016 for $262,000. And it's appreciated to $315,000 by now, which is crazy.
Wow.
And I was able to, I put 20% down on all my properties, but I was able to take out something called a HELOC from the first property, which allows me to access that equity, that appreciation, to put a down payment on the fourth house. Because, at the time I was buying the fourth house, I didn't have as much cash, but I was able to leverage my existing equity on my first house that was just sitting there to, purchase that fourth house.
Now, if you do a HELOC, you can do that without being a resident in that house?
Yes, you can. You can do a HELOC on investor property.
I didn't know that. Wow. Okay, I learned something here. Great. Go ahead.
I would say I was inspired by my grandpa, as you mentioned, when he bought several properties in the Bay Area, and he was able to help pay my college tuition and that of my brothers as well. And it really inspired me. Like I'm able to create generational wealth through real estate.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, so you started buying one a year in 2016. So do you have 3 or 4 properties now?
I have 4 properties now.
4 properties, and you're generating $10,755 per month in rental income. Wow. That's impressive. And are they all averaging around that? What did you say on that first one you were getting on gross rents?
Yeah, the first one, I added one extra bedroom, and then that created $2,500 in gross rent. And I was expected to make more like $1,500. So yeah, just by renting it out to college students, I buy right across the street from campus, and so I'm providing housing that's a lot cheaper than on-campus housing. So on-campus housing is usually around $1,100 for like the dormitories, right?
Right.
What I'm providing is a place that's more private, a lot more space, that's only $600 per month, and so for a lot of people, it's a great deal. In fact, I think it's a huge blue ocean because every time I market my properties, I'm getting 3 interested high quality tenants for every room I have. So I never have like a lack of interest.
Wow, that's great. Now, do you rent per room or per bed?
Oh, actually, that's a great question.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the other opportunity. You can put in 2 people into 1 bedroom, and that will increase your net cash flow even further, right? So I have a couple who decided to take one of the larger bedrooms, and I charge a little bit less for each person, but overall it's about $300 more just by putting 2 people in 1 bedroom.
And you said that the sort of going rate just for regular rentals on Rentometer and what have you would be $700 per room or just per rental or 1 bedroom rental. Is that what you're factoring?
On Rentometer, my 3-bed, 2 baths, and I always buy 3-bed, 2 baths because I can always add the 4 for the 5th bedroom.
Gotcha.
They usually go around $1,500 to $1,700 on Rentometer. And then when I got the appraisal report that estimated market rent, it was around $1,800 or so.
Okay. And how much are you rent out per bedroom?
$620 per bedroom. So
Okay.
for 4-bed, that would be around $2,500. And if I add the 5th bed, that'll be $3,100.
Gotcha. So, but getting 4-bedroom, does that change your matrix a lot? I mean, were your, let's say, second and third property more bedrooms, or were they all 3-bedroom?
Oh, they were all 3-bed, 2-bath, and I added the 4 for fifth because I want to do a value add, right? Every time I add a bedroom, I add $620 average to my cash flow.
So when you buy the 3-bedroom, you're looking at a place that looks like you'll be able to add on, and be able to meet the local building requirements and so forth.
Right. That's a good point. That's what I do.
Okay, great. So you have to have a little bit of add-on room, add another story, or would you just add on to a single-story property? When you add on that room, you're not necessarily going up or above a garage or something like that. You're just adding on to level ground.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Usually I can change an extra family room into a bedroom because usually college students don't need all that extra space. They're pretty content with having a place to, sleep and maybe study. And that's pretty much it. So wherever I can convert like a den or a family room into a bedroom, that's usually what I do. In fact, a lot of times I don't even have to put up walls because there's already, a room and a partition for an extra bedroom.
Okay, so do you keep the living room and the kitchen? So I mean, do you always have a living room, or no? You sometimes take the living room away.
I wouldn't take the whole living room away. There was on my first house, I split the living room in half. So I put up a wall, and then half of the living room became a bedroom, and then the other half is still the living room. And there was still plenty of space in the living room for a table, a dining table, and basically a place to socialize. So yeah, it worked out really well.
So you're not increasing square footage then. You're using existing square footage in each case?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so you're not knocking out a wall, putting in new foundation or anything. I mean, you're...
Oh, definitely not. That would cost a lot.
Okay, so yeah, that's what I was going to say. So you're just throwing in some drywall, right? Trippy. Wow, that is
yeah. We're talking
great.
about $1,000, $1,500 project that's making me an extra $620 per month for the rest of my life, right?
Awesome,
yeah.
Man. That is great. That's brilliant. That is really. So, what's the average square footage of, let's say, your first property? And are they all pretty much in the same size, roughly?
My last house was bigger than the others. It was around 2,700 square foot, but my first houses were pretty small, actually. I think my smallest house is 1,900 square feet.
Okay, so they're pretty good size, not huge, but and is parking a key issue for you when you're shopping for new properties?
Oh yeah, parking's very important because a lot of the students will have cars, especially the ones I rented to. So I usually don't target freshmen or sophomores. I will usually target third or fourth year students or professional students like pharmacy students, dental students, or medical students, because those students usually have reached a certain level of maturity and they take more responsibility. They take care of the house more. So they are high quality tenants in my mind. So I focus on my advertising toward those.
Gotcha. Yeah. And how difficult is it for you? I mean, are all your properties walking distance to campus?
Yeah, all within a 5-minute walking distance.
Gosh, now how hard is it to find properties that close? I would imagine other people might be, thinking of the same thing.
Right. I would say a couple come up every year, 3 or 4. And once it comes up, I look at the deal, and if the numbers make sense, I buy it.
Wow. Well, the first one, I mean, you definitely made some equity on that. That's awesome. Yes. What are prices at now as you're maybe seeking out additional properties?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So, you know how California the housing market goes up like crazy here.
Right.
Most of the properties now are around $315,000, which it's still great. If I'm able to make 3,100, that almost makes the 1% rule still, right?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, if I were to go back, I wish I started earlier. If I were to go back, I would actually buy a house in college using an FHA loan and basically house hack to my, college buddies. And then that would be a really great start because houses back then were like low 200,000s because
Right.
Stockton had a bankruptcy. And so the housing price market went way down back then.
Right. And you're only doing this in Stockton, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Are you looking to expand? Are you going to be buying more properties?
I have an open mind, potentially moving out of state because this market works even better out of state. You can get houses, 3-bed, 2 baths for, 200,000s, right, out of state, and you can get the same amount of rent if you rent to college students. College rent always is around $500 to $700 per month, I'm finding. And so the cap rates will be a lot higher. Your return on investment basically will be a lot higher if you apply this model to other states.
And you are self-managing, right? You don't have a property manager.
That is correct. Yeah.
Okay. So how do you do that working full time? I mean, are your hours is just your standard 40-hour weeks, or do you put in more time on your full-time job?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I was saving up for a down payment on the first house and, the second house, I was working a lot of overtime. And I was able to manage this stuff on the side because I had a system and processes in place that I created so that everything's pretty much automated.
Okay. So share a little bit more. What do you mean automated?
So, yeah, so I have a process for like if tenants complain, usually I'll have the tenants talk face to face with each other. I learned that it's important to empower the tenants and give them that responsibility that they're adults now, right? So they need to work out their differences with the other tenants face to face first. Because I found when I called up the tenant who was complained about and said, "Hey, this other guy's telling me that you're causing a lot of ruckus or whatever, trashing the house," then that guy got mad at the other tenant and said, "Hey, that guy went behind my back." So the situation escalated and got worse. So I find every time I ask the tenant to just talk face to face with each other, the issue resolves.
Interesting. And I mean, are you there to sort of moderate, or do you just tell them, just talk to the guy you have the problem with?
Not anymore. Yeah, as soon as they talk face to face, the issue's resolved. If not, then I would follow up with a call. And if that didn't work, then I could always go to the parent. And then usually after you go to the parent, they straighten out the kid right away. So it gets resolved pretty quickly there. But I only had to go to the parent one time.
Ah, okay. Mm-hmm. Now, do your parents always sign the applications for the tenants?
Yeah, a lot of times I do require a co-signature, and that's great.
What determines that?
So I would say it depends on the bank account of the kid or the parent. Usually I have the parent pay. So usually when the parent is paying, they will do a co-signature.
Gotcha.
So I usually get like last 2-month bank statements and FICO score from the parent. And then that's enough usually to qualify them.
Gotcha. Now you said when they have a conflict that this is odd. Is this automated? What do you do that's automated in that process?
Yeah. So like I said, having them talk face to face. Usually I just send them a text that I pre-wrote to have them basically empower them to talk face to face with each other. If something breaks down, like if they complain about a broken toilet, I basically forward their text message to my contractor team. So I have a team of contractors, 3 contractors I can reach out to fix those types of issues. And then the contractor lets himself in by the electronic code on the door. And then he just does his work and then leaves. And then I have the other tenants check on his work to make sure everything was fixed. And then he sends me the bill and I send him a check. and I don't have to go down there. And I haven't been down to Stockton in over 7 months now. So
You're
yeah,
serious.
yeah,
That is crazy. And
yeah.
they're not that far. It's not that far away. It's like what, 50, not even 50-minute drive, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly. And then the other thing is tenant showings, right? Usually people have to be present for, to show the house to the incoming tenants.
right.
And so what I do is I just take the last year tenants and then I have them say, hey, what's a good time that you could show everyone the house? And I schedule like one time for like maybe 5 interested people. And then when those people get in the house, they say, oh, look, 4 other people are interested. I better get in my application quickly. And so that kind of increases the demand for the bedrooms, right? And I don't have to go down there because my other tenant, just lets them in the house and shows them the room. And that's automated. It just happens without me having to do anything physically.
So let me just clarify that. Okay, so you've got existing tenants, and maybe you've got one that's been there for over a year, so you seem to know them a little bit better. They seem more reliable, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you contact that person, get a time slot that they can show for you, and then they schedule, or do they schedule, or who does actual scheduling of those people to come for that showing?
Yeah, usually I have the tenant comes up with a date that they're free.
Uh-huh.
And then I'll give the prospective tenants that tenant's number. And so they kind of come in contact.
They coordinate with them directly.
It. Yeah, exactly.
Got you. Okay. And you generally show them all at the same time, right? So so it does kind of create that little, the frenzy, the buying frenzy.
The urgency.
And now do you incentivize your tenants to show? I mean, some might say, what a hassle. Why is he having me do that? Is there any incentive in it for them?
Usually if I ask nicely, they're willing to help me out. I haven't had to provide a specific incentive, but I have offered a referral. I did offer a referral amount of $100 one year to help me, generate leads, but I haven't had to do that ever since.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, do when they show, they are all handed an application at the time, they fill it out on the spot, and then, or is that online? How do you take in the applications and review them?
Yeah, so I just send them an email with the rental application. They fill it out, and then I look through it. If they seem well qualified, no pets. I don't have pets on my property, and then I just send back to them, okay, that looks good. Can I just have the last 2-month bank statements and FICO score of whoever will be paying the rent, which is usually the parents. And then after that, I do some screening. Of course, I want to make sure they are not the party type. So I do look through the social media profiles for sure. And then I kind of just gauge what type of person they are just from how they respond to me. So if they're very responsive and they're, respectful and everything, I can kind of tell they're a more mature student, and that's kind of the ideal tenant, right? So I would choose that one over someone who seems a lot younger, who doesn't get back to me. Because like for someone who doesn't get back to me, what if I have to contact them for late rent, right? Then the person who gets back to me right away, of course, they're going to pay the late rent right away. But the person who, kind of doesn't respond, that's going to be a problem, right? So, yeah, right. I do kind of screen my tenants for that.
Do you, it's interesting on the social media thing. Do you ask them actually to give you their social media contact info on the app?
No, they actually, they contact me through Facebook. So a lot of my marketing is through Facebook.
Very good. You have a marketplace, right?
Yes, marketplace is one of them, but every university has a Facebook group.
Gotcha.
Facebook groups associated with them, like the textbook exchange group, the off-campus housing group.
Gotcha.
There's class of 2021. All those types of groups, I can, put up my ad on there, and then I get a lot of interested tenants. I usually fill up my places within 1 month now, 1 month of advertising. And a lot of times I don't even have to advertise nowadays because I just rely through referrals. I have 18 tenants now, and those 18 tenants each have, 5 friends that might be interested, right? So
Right.
I always have, a huge pool of people interested.
Cool. And do you do, let's say, a credit check or criminal checks on your
No,
tenants?
I don't have to do that. No, it's the parents paying. So I never have to like evict a tenant because what parent is gonna, have risk not pay rent and risk their child being evicted from where they're staying on campus, right?
Right. Now you do that with the grad students too, or the advanced, professional degree students too? Their parents also have to sign?
Yes, that's
Oh,
correct.
okay. Everybody. Okay. Got it.
Most people, like if I really can't get, because some parents are very hesitant about co-signing anything. If I really can't get a co-signature, then I just have to make sure the bank statements make sense. And, the student's a very mature student, right? That I'm not going to have any problems.
Right. And so you're looking at the last 2 months of bank statements or 3?
2 months.
2 months. Got it. Okay. Great. Wow. This is really, really fascinating to me. One, it's just, again, it's a creative way to take a single family home. And, I know people in California, one of the things they're doing too is they're converting those 3-bedroom homes to 3 Airbnb units, for example, or, there's other ways that are because the rents and the and the cost of the house, it doesn't quite meet that 1% rule generally, but
Right.
you kind of broken the scale on that one, which is great. And I mean, if you wanted to dig deeper, I guess you could do the per bed thing too if you wanted. But it seems like the people like having their own private room too.
Oh yeah, definitely. Compared to the dormitory life, sharing a bathroom with like 20 other people versus, having only sharing it with one other person, a lot of them go for that.
Right. And you're always getting the 3-bedroom, 2-bath. And then if you end up with 4 bedrooms, then you'd be sharing, you 2 people per bath. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
Got it. And you generally, has this been sort of your MO here is to add an extra bedroom to each property you get?
Yes. I've always added at least one extra bedroom.
Okay. Great. And your parking situation, is it generally street parking, or do you ever end up with places that have more, parking on the actual property itself?
Yeah, so I do have a driveway and street parking at all of my properties. I do look for that, of course, because certain gated communities, they only allow a certain amount of cars to park in that neighborhood. So I
Right.
do look for neighborhoods that allow for street parking.
Gotcha. Now, when people think of student housing, the first thing that comes to their mind is, oh my gosh, kegger parties, crazy, out of control beer cans in the, in the bushes and crazy stuff. How do you sort of, you talked about your screening, and that's probably the way that you're controlling that. But have you encountered those kinds of challenges with the properties that you have yet?
Yeah, the first year, I mentioned there was that tenant I had to talk to his parents, right? So this tenant was doing a lot of pot when it was actually illegal in California still. And then he was having these parties, and then the other tenants were getting really fed up with it. So the way I dealt with it, I did it wrong. I called him up and say, hey, the other guys are complaining, right? And then he got pissed off and the situation escalated. So that's when I learned, okay, just have them talk it out among themselves and then empower them. Tell them, what to say, right? Like, say why you're upset, right? And then come up with an action plan that you guys can both agree upon that, for the future. So you guys don't, cause too much trouble for the neighbors or too much trouble for each other, right?
Kind of sounds like almost like an intervention type thing,
Yeah,
where they
exactly.
sit down in your half a living room, right? And
Yeah.
and say, okay, Mikey, you're really a great guy, but
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
You got to stop, selling crack here to the neighborhood. Okay. All right. Oh, that's funny. Oh, okay. That is very cool. Now, do you have a portal, like an online portal where people can, where parents can pay, where, anything like that you've tied to your properties?
So most of it is through Facebook Messenger. That's how I usually communicate with my tenants, or email. But for payments, I use a payment app called Zelle, and that works really well. It's direct deposit, so I can tell exactly when they send it, so I can tell if it's late or not. And, everyone, like the kids are especially, they can download it on their phone. And, kids are very good with technology, right? So this is very convenient for them, and they can set it to auto pay and everything. So I never receive, late or unpaid rent.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Well, doing this as long as you have here, this is, you're in your fourth year. What mistakes did you sort of commit early on that you've learned from that now, is something that, you not only learned from, but you're are avoiding in the future here?
Yeah, I have a great story for that, actually. So, when I bought my first house, it was a very old house. It was over 100 years old, right? And
Wow.
I didn't do a sewage line inspection. So come a year in or so, I get this call at like 11 p.m., right? And my tenant told me, hey, dude, the sewage line broke, I think, and there's sewage coming out of the kitchen sink onto the kitchen floor. I'm like, what?
Man.
Oh,
Yeah.
man. So, and this was on a weekend too. So I had to call like 6 people before I finally got a hold of someone who could clean up the mess and sanitize it professionally. And they had to put in a sump pump too. And so that cost me like a couple thousand just to do that. But then when we stuck a camera down the sewage pipe, it turned out that the whole line was broken.
Oh, man.
So I had to replace the whole sewage line with PVC piping. And because it was cast iron, so cast iron has a tendency to rust and roots get into it. And so it breaks the pipe. So I converted to PVC, and that cost me $6,000 to replace the whole line.
Ouch.
So, lesson of the moral of the story is always do a sewage line inspection during the escrow phase, because you can negotiate to maybe have a check sent at closing to repair the sewage line, or you can find, breaks and all that, and then maybe the seller would repair it before you buy that property.
Yeah, that's a great point. Wow. Yeah. Did that kind of change your attitude about buying older homes, or did that, it wasn't so much a factor?
I do still buy relatively older homes, like 50 or 60 years old. But I mean, just doing that sewage line inspection, if it's old, it saves a lot of headaches, because it's only a couple $100 and it's saving you a couple $1,000s. So I'm a big believer in preventative maintenance. And so doing those types of things to prevent major issues down the line are things, I use to reduce my expenses on all the houses.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and you mentioned the preventative maintenance. That's a key emphasis for you, isn't it, in terms of trying to avoid those potential high-cost repair and maintenance items, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, one of the things I do is I remove grass where I can, and I replace with mulch. So that kind of decreases the water bill. And then I cut out trees where I can, the trees that are close to the house, and have their branches like overhanging my rooftop, because with the branches overhanging your roof, squirrels and rats can actually climb those branches and get into your house. And I actually had that problem. I had squirrels and rats, and then fleas as well, get into the house because the branches were overhanging. So either at least trimming those branches ahead of time, or removing the tree entirely helps out a ton. And plus, the trees also have roots that could dig into the sewage pipes, as we discussed on this call earlier.
Right. Are all of your properties a single story, or do you have 2-story buildings as well?
Most are single story now. So the 2 stories I find are less efficient energy-wise. So the tenants will complain more, and the tenants are the ones paying the bill, but they will complain to me if the bills are really high. So I do try to do one-story houses because they're more energy efficient. I get less complaints about the energy bill.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say your sort of your biggest success in the time that you've been investing that's really worked well for you and something that you want to continue doing in the future?
I would say just having a mindset, because the mindset is just as important as the physical work and the skills involved, right? If you kind of have your first property and things are going to go wrong every time, you're going to make mistakes, right? If you make that mistake and you're like, oh man, I don't think I should do this anymore. The stock market, I could have had a lot more returns in the stock market this year. I'm going to quit real estate, right? That's kind of the defeatist mindset you don't want to have. So I read a lot of books on mindset, and, I watched YouTube videos as well. And they basically teach you how to have a vision of yourself for your future self, like your better version of yourself and what your ideal life looks like. And when you keep that ideal life in mind, then you know what you're working towards. And that motivates you every day to, even though things happen, obstacles come up, you can overcome those obstacles because you have that drive and you have that vision of yourself where you want to be.
Gotcha. Well, our audience are folks that are, at least our target audience are 50 plus individuals who are either approaching retirement or they're already in retirement. And so they're looking at real estate investing as a means to really generate cash flow above all else. And what advice would you have for people like that that are starting later in life? Is this a good means for them to be able to generate cash flow that's not going to be like a full-time job for them?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So like for me, I'm building a passive income portfolio of $10,755 per month. And I'm actually able, by reinvesting the cash flow and my W-2 income, to pay off the houses within 4 years. So that means by from the beginning when I bought my first house to when I would be able to retire is about 8 years or so. So real estate, it kind of pays off around the 7 or 8 year mark. But, after those 8 years, I will be making 6 figures in passive income, and that would support me for the rest of my life. So, for older folk, you can do this, and in 8 years, you will have this guaranteed cash flow coming in. You don't have to rely on the ups and downs of the stock market or, a company pension plan anymore. This provides you guaranteed income. As long as you have a system and processes in place, it provides you guaranteed income for the rest of your life. And not only that, for older folk, they have a lot probably saved up in their current house, so they can access some of that equity, leverage that equity to get started if they wanted to, versus like newer grads like me. I had to save up. I had to work a lot overtime before I was able to put a down payment on my first house. And a lot of us are, we have student loans and everything too, right? So for older folk, it's a great opportunity. There's the advantage that you already have all that equity saved up, or that, cash in the bank to start investing.
That's great. I really like that. Yeah, because a lot of people, if they're in their 50s and they're retiring in 60, 65, they've got ample time to be able to do that payoff, which I really like that. And so what percentage of your income do you also apply to the payoff of the properties?
I would say as much as I can. I would say around maybe 20%. It depends on, what I want to do in the future. I'm still kind of determining whether I should buy more properties or if I should just pay off these 4. Because if I just pay off these 4, it's 6 figures, right? So I'm at the stage where I'm kind of determining whether I should just pay it off or I should, leverage for more properties. Because obviously when you leverage, you have a higher return on investment.
And you're only 27 now, or
yeah.
So mean, you still got a long time. Yeah, I mean that's great. I love the approach. Too bad you don't have like a spreadsheet or something. You could share with us that shows, how you've projected out the amount of time it would take to pay off properties and so forth. And but that's it's. I mean, I guess somebody could figure that out fairly easily, I imagine. Plus, you're getting such a huge amount in each month. Well, granted, I know you've got your expenses to maintain the property. Do you also cover all the utilities, or are those paid for by your tenants?
They are paid for by the tenants.
So water, electricity, sewer, trash. I don't know if there's landscaping.
Landscaping I do pay for, but for the rest, they do pay. And usually I will have like one tenant in charge of the utility bills. And so they will pay the bill and then they'll charge the other tenants. So that's another way to automate that whole process.
So, wow.
So I'm all for automating everything,
Yeah, that's smart.
Yeah.
That's so smart. Now, do you, okay, so let's say we've got $3,100 coming in on the property. Are you sort of at the 50% rule with this, where your 50% of it goes to your mortgage and expenses, and then the other 50% is available, or do you know sort of where you're at in that regard?
Yeah, so as far as cash flow, I make net cash flow $1,500 per month because I do 15-year mortgages. So I'm able to make cash flow on the 15-year mortgages. And so most of my cash does go toward the principal.
Okay, so that's an important factor. Now, did you actually sit down, for example, and say, okay, if I got a 15-year mortgage and if I got a 30-year mortgage, which one would I pay off first by, doing the additional principal payments, for example? Did you kind of calculate that out? Because I've heard some people say that, you can pay off a 30-year mortgage sooner than you can a 15-year mortgage, but I don't know if that makes sense.
Generally speaking, the 15-year mortgage will have a lower interest rate, about 0.5% lower interest rate. So that's why I went with the 15-year. Better loan terms, like lower closing costs, lower interest rate. And I figured I will probably pay these off relatively quickly. Like, I'm not going to wait for 30 years to have it paid off. So for 15 years made a lot of sense to me. But, you can experiment. You can do 10 years. You can do 17 years or whatever. There's a lot of options out there. You don't have to just do 15 and 30, which are standard, but you can, work with lenders to do a different, whatever term makes sense for you to get that cash flow that you want.
Oh, sure. Well, and I'm thinking too, if each month you're paying, let's say $1,500, taking all that cash flow and applying it to the principal, that's got to accelerate that payoff really quickly.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, my first house is on a 10-year mortgage, so that will be paid off. I think there's $25,000 left on that one. So after that's paid off, it's like $2,500 per month, just guaranteed,
And then you'll take all that extra cash flow and throw it into paying off another one.
Exactly.
So you're going to be accelerating this thing really fast.
I do actually, have a spreadsheet to do this. If I put in extra monthly payments of this much toward the principal, how fast would it be paid off?
I'd love to, if you wouldn't mind sharing that. I'd love to.
Definitely.
Yeah, maybe I could post that in the show notes when we have your show, broadcast. So, very cool, very cool. Well, what's sort of your long-term play here? You're so young, and you've got all this time ahead of you. What are you thinking in terms of real estate? You've got a job. It sounds like you obviously love and enjoy doing too. What's sort of your long-term? 10, 20 years down the road.
Yeah, Bill. So I love my job. It's just the flexibility that, the lack of flexibility that kind of drove me toward this path toward financial freedom. So pharmacists, we work usually every other weekend because on the weekends, we still have to be open for patients, right? So just the idea that I could eventually be at a place where I can, do what I want, where I want, with whomever I want to, the idea of financial freedom and having that passive income coming in to support my family, to support my kids, to support me if some, large medical bill comes up, right, or some emergency happens, that provides me true financial security. And so that was always my goal.
Gotcha. And are you thinking more properties, or you're still trying? It sounds like you're kind of still debating whether or not you want to go more properties or not.
Let me put it this way. If an opportunity comes up, I'm not going to be sitting on the sidelines. If I see a house that's worth 300,000 that's being sold for 200,000, I'm going to buy that house.
Sure. No, that makes all the sense in the world. That's great.
So I'm constantly looking at deals on Zillow, and MLS. I get MLS listings and all that. So I just peruse them. I get an email.
That's great. That's great. Our time has kind of zipped by. It's a shame because I'm just having a kick just hearing how you're doing this, and you also got great answers. Which allowed me to ask a lot more questions. You're real precise in your answers, so I appreciate that too.
Thank you, Bill.
Well, we're at what we call our wrap it up session, and this is where I ask you a series of quick questions on resources that you use that might be valuable for those listening that might also be able to find out about. So, if you are ready, we'll go ahead and wrap it up.
Sounds good to me, Bill.
All right. Favorite real estate book?
Millionaire Real Estate Investing by Gary Keller. That one's a great book.
Great book, yeah. How about favorite business book?
I would say The E-Myth is a great one.
By
E-Myth
Michael
Revisited.
Yeah. Good one. How about most valuable website for success?
Ooh, that one's a good one. I like Tony Robbins, actually. He goes, he goes into a lot of mindset work that needs to be done. And I think like 80% of the work actually is mindset, just having the mindset for success.
That's great. How about a favorite app that you use?
I really love Zelle. I use Facebook Messenger a lot to communicate with my tenants, right? Or to find potential tenants. So those two, I would say.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. What about a favorite quote?
I would say, live each day as if it were your last. That's by Marcus Aurelius. That was always one of my favorite quotes.
Excellent. And then this one, which a little bit more deeper here, is if you lost absolutely everything you have, asset-wise, and you had to start over, but you only have $1,000 in cash, what would you do with that $1,000 to relaunch your real estate investing business?
Ooh, let's see, only $1,000. I would say, you can't totally do a no money down deal a lot of times, but using that to invest in yourself, like develop a skill, educate yourself on some skill that's going to make you a high income. And then from that high income skill, use that high income to save up and put that down payment on a house. And I would house hack at that point. If I'm kind of strapped on cash, you can house hack for FHA loan, 3.5% down. Great.
Wow. Well, I'm sure there's a lot of folks listening here that would like to find out more about you and what you do. Is there a way that people could reach you, or just learn a little bit more about what you're doing?
Yeah, so I'm teaching others how to invest in the student rental market by, providing the system and processes that I use. And I also have like an email list. I give very good advice for newbie investors. And you can visit my website and sign up for the email list at www.newbierealestateinvesting.com. That's www.newbierealestateinvesting.com. And newbie is spelled Newbie.
Got it. Great. That's great. I'm sure you're going to have a lot of people contacting on that. Well, gosh, Ryan, this has been a kick and good information. Love it. But we have a tradition here. We have all of our guests close out our show with their best old hound dog howl. I lived in Northern California. I know, what it's like up there, and there's a lot of hound dogs around. So I'm sure you're not going to have any problem coming up with a good one for us here. Are you ready?
Ready.
All right, go for it.
Oh!
Right. So, well, Ryan, thank you so much. This has been a great show. I'm really looking forward to this one. I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of interest in it as well. So, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Bill. I appreciate you inviting me on the podcast.
Oh, my pleasure. And I want to thank all our old dog listeners out there, too, for joining us. I know there's a lot of other things you could be doing right now, but the fact that you've taken the time to join us means a lot, and we really appreciate it. Please note everything that Ryan talked about today in this interview, which I think is a hot one here. It's all going to be presented in our detailed show notes on the Old Dogs website, and that's going to include links as well. That's at olddogsreinetwork.com/blog. You're going to look for the interview with Ryan Chaw. Well, that's the show for today. Remember, cash flow is king and real estate investing the means. Until next time, keep moving forward and may God bless.
Thank you very much for visiting the Old Dogs REI Network. We would greatly appreciate if you would stop by iTunes and let us know what you think of the show. We would love if you could subscribe to the podcast, give us a 5-star rating, and write a review. The more ratings and reviews we receive, the more visible the podcast will be to others. Thank you.